One of the most unique aspects of the original Star Wars trilogy is the home release of the films over the decades. I'm not talking about them simply being released for various formats. I'm talking about the actual changes made to the various home releases. Each release since the mid-90s added, changed, manipulated, and tinkered with the films themselves, which has been controversial since day one. The special edition VHSs, the DVD release, the Blu-ray, the 4K, they're all slightly different from one another. Scenes have been added, scenes have been changed, CGI inserted, colors shifted, audio swapped. And despite the tech train rolling forward with incredible modern viewing capabilities, the original versions haven't seen an official release since the low-resolution 2006 DVD bonus disc. And because of this, people have taken it upon themselves to hunt for or even create the most authentic version of what the original version of Star Wars looked and sounded like before those changes were made. And I love it. These are projects of passion. There are a bunch of these fan projects, from Harmy's Despecialized edition to Pugogrand's 16mm restoration, from the Silver Screen edition to Project 4K77, and there's even more. But for this video, I'll be comparing, discussing, and starting off with a little history about the ones that I've watched the most, which are Harmy's Despecialized edition, Project 4K77, and the official 2011 Blu-ray release. A word to the wise, fan edits should never be bought or sold. If you see someone selling a fan edit, do not support them. The makers of these edits, Harmy, Team -1, and so on, do not sell them. When someone buys a fan edit, they're literally paying some random greedy dipshit to burn a movie that they downloaded from the internet onto a disc for them. It's a racket. Do not buy them. I'm leaving a link in the description below that will lead to Harmy himself speaking on this very subject. Give it a listen. Now let's jump into some history of these three versions. If you want to skip directly to the comparison, go to the time code on your screen right now. Cool? Cool.
History.
Harmy's Despecialized edition, I would say, is the most widely known out of the ones that I've mentioned. It is described on Wikipedia as a fan-created film preservation of the original Star Wars trilogy films. In 2010, Harmy, seen here, and 8 other fans got to work. Quote, "I wanted to be able to show people who haven't seen Star Wars yet, like my little brother or my girlfriend, the original Oscar-winning version, but I didn't want to have to show it to them in bad quality." Close quote. The majority of the material that Harmy used to reconstruct the original version of Star Wars came from the 2011 Blu-ray release, and other sequences were taken from previous home releases as well, like the 1993 Laserdisc box set, which was upscaled. Harmy was helped by fellow fans from OriginalTrilogy.com.
Team -1, Belbicus, Harry Hen, Catbus, Dark Jedi, U2, Laser Schwert.
It took thousands of hours between them to finish the first version of the Despecialized edition, which was ultimately released in 2011. Since then, updated versions have been created along with versions of The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. In fact, Harmy is currently working on version 3 of the Despecialized edition. The amount of effort and time to make this project happen cannot be overstated. In an interview with Lara Johnson, which I'll leave a link to in the video description below, Harmy said, quote, "A lot of the work I was doing was rotoscoping, which is basically tracing around objects frame by frame. In this case, to remove them from the background and replace the background with the original background." Close quote. And if any of you guys have ever done any rotoscoping, you know how mind-numbingly tedious it can be. Harmy also said, quote, "If both versions were available in the same quality, I would probably enjoy watching the special edition once in a while. It's not about George Lucas not being able to do these special editions. If people like the special editing, they can continue watching those, as long as both versions are available." Close quote. And I echo the same exact sentiment as Harmy. I don't want the special editions to be erased. I don't think anyone really does. All I'm looking for is the original version of Star Wars in HD or 4K or whatever formats are on the horizon. I mean, my Blade Runner Blu-ray set has like 5 different discs on it, with like 3 or 4 or 5 or 3, I don't even know how many versions of the movie are on those discs. There's a lot though. I just want something like that. I just want it to exist, for the sake of preservation. That's all. But hey, even if we never get to drink from the official Star Wars HD Holy Grail, at least we always have Harmy's Despecialized Edition. J.J. Abrams even talked about the special edition and the Despecialized Edition. It's really interesting. During an interview with Now This News, J.J. Abrams was asked about the unaltered Star Wars trilogy getting a commercial release. In response, Abrams said, quote, "And I have asked about this, but I've been told that for reasons that I quite don't understand, that's not necessarily possible, which is, too bad, because that was the thing that I loved." In fact, it's funny, when we were working on Force Awakens, we were talking about this one scene with Vader and the Emperor, and we were having this disagreement about what was said. And in a way it was like we both felt crazy. And we realized we were talking about 2 different versions, because there's the Despecialized version, which you can see online. Someone got me a version. And then there was an official version. There was the original theatrical version, and then the version that people see now. Close quote. So the Despecialized edition is even passed around among the modern Star Wars bigwigs. That's kind of crazy. To me, Project 4K77 is the definitive version of the original Star Wars film that I and so many others have been wanting, have been looking for. Instead of reconstructing or reverse engineering multiple releases of the films like Harmy did, Project 4K77 restored multiple 35mm theatrical prints. They scanned them in at 4K resolution, cleaned them up at 4K resolution, and rendered it out at 4K resolution. Project 4K77 is not an upscale of other sources. As the team put it, this was all done natively in 4K from 35mm sources. Harmy, who, as we discussed, created the Despecialized edition, even said that Project 4K77 is, quote, "so good that for my own personal enjoyment, I'm perfectly happy watching this version of Star Wars. So I don't have as much motivation as I used to create Despecialized," close quote. Harmy, you've done plenty, my friend. Take a rest. Take a load off. You've earned it. So, Project 4K77, Team Negative, they scanned some prints, cleaned up dirt, dust, and scratches with off-the-shelf software. In fact, 97% of Project 4K77 is from a single original 1977 35mm Technicolor release print. The other 3% came from other 4K scans of different 35mm prints, along with the same LPP print that the Silver Screen edition used, and a couple other prints as well. As Project 4K77 says, other projects are less grainy, they're sharper, and have better colors, but this is the most authentic 1977 version since 1977. Project 4K77 has become my go-to way to watch Star Wars. The official 2011 Blu-ray release actually sparked the idea to make this channel. I was on a Navy deployment from October 2010 to April 2011, and whenever we'd pull into port and I could find some internet access, I'd often hunt for news on the Blu-ray release. At the time, I had never seen a Blu-ray movie. We're talking 10 years ago. I didn't own a HD TV, so I was extremely excited. And then at a certain point, I found out that there were going to be even more changes made to the Blu-ray release on top of the changes made in previous releases, which was a bummer. But regardless, I was super excited to experience Star Wars at home in a new way. I literally bought a PS3 and a HD TV just to watch Star Wars on Blu-ray. And despite the additional changes, I was absolutely blown away. The picture is undeniably gorgeous. The sound rattles floorboards. Hell, the box that it came in is stunning. So, let's compare these three versions of Star Wars. One of the biggest changes that often goes overlooked is the blue tint that was added to a lot of the film for the 2011 Blu-ray. Brightness seems to have been turned down, heavy contrast in certain instances. Now, this isn't one of those glaringly bad changes that we'll see in a bit. It looks sleek. It's not something I have a problem with. It's more of an interesting tidbit. In fact, some people probably prefer the look of the Blu-ray. And let's face it, the vast majority of viewers aren't really gonna care, right? When Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke, and the two droids head into Mos Eisley, entirely new shots of them coming into the port have been added. Womp rats, ASP labor droids, which first appeared in 1996's Shadows of the Empire, more hustle and bustle in the streets of Mos Eisley, a swoop bike, and a Ronto. It's at this point we're able to get the three versions synced up again. And then, big old green dino hips walk right in front of the camera, which is my favorite scene in all of Star Wars. So much so that I got a poster of it and put it up in my office. The 20th Century Fox and Lucasfilm logos have been changed. The timing of these intro pieces have been changed as well. And as we all know, the original title of Episode 4, A New Hope, was simply Star Wars. So Episode 4, A New Hope was added. The first time Episode 4, A New Hope was added to the opening crawl was actually during the film's theatrical re-release in 1981. And this is a change I've never had a problem with. Star Wars turned into a saga. I get it.
It's just called Star Wars.
Cool it. New Death Star flight sequences were first added to the movie for the 1997 Special Edition release. In fact, these new CGI shots were heavily used during the promotion, specifically trailers, of the Special Edition. More kinetic movement, more fluidity. I remember seeing a trailer for the Special Edition, and these new shots were present, and it blew my mind. It looked great. The change is, I would say, undeniably better, in the sense of it just being more energetic and clean. But it is a change. And despite thinking that this particular change does subtly enhance the overall battle, I think I will always prefer the original. Can't shake it. For the 2011 Blu-ray release, a digital rock was added in front of R2-D2 while he's hiding from Tusken Raiders. This is an example of a why change. But the comparisons between versions is deeper than simply a digital rock. You can clearly see how the original 35mm print was very washed out in places. Now, that could just be because the 35mm print was a theatrical release and it got played multiple times, who knows? But the brightness seems to be blasted out in certain spots. When it comes to comparing the quality of the image between these three versions, desert scenes are where the differences are very noticeable. As Project 4K77's Team 1 Negative said, some versions look better than 4K77, and I don't think there's any questioning that. We already know about all of these changes though, right? I've been saying it for 10 damn years, ain't I been saying it, Miguel? So this video is more of a visual comparison, quality-wise, between these three versions. Project 4K77 is literally what the movie looked like in 1977 if you plopped your ass down in the theater and opened your eyes. In fact, it's recommended that you watch Project 4K77 on a projector to get that experience. The Blu-ray is often really dark, too dark, in my opinion, during certain sequences. Out of the 3 versions on your screen right now, I think I prefer the look of Harmy's Despecialized. The colors and the brightness look exactly like the original version found on the 2006 DVD, which was a transfer from the 1993 Laserdisc masters. 3 versions, 3 different looks, 3 different methods of bringing Star Wars into the modern world of HD home viewing. Despite not having an official release of the original Star Wars in HD, I'm completely content. Despecialized and Project 4K77 have pretty much given me exactly what I've wanted since the Blu-ray was first announced. An unaltered version of Star Wars for a modern viewing experience. Because of what these fans have done, an official release isn't nearly as important to me as it used to be. Now, where I think it's important lies is with future generations of Star Wars viewers, or people who just haven't seen the way the movie used to be, right? And while Despecialized and Project 4K77 are available for anyone, not everyone is computer savvy, so a commercial release of the original version would make way more sense. Hell, I would buy it. Of course I'd buy it. You guys know I would buy it. It would be like the 6th box set of the OT that I own, but I would own that thing with pride. When the official release comes out, and I say when, because I am still a believer that it'll happen eventually. But when it does, what will happen to this movement, if you want to call it a movement? I mean, communities have popped up around this issue. The fact that this problem exists has given people something to hope for, or even fight for, or something to work on. And it's always a fascinating discussion, right? The whys, the hows, the whens of all of these changes. So, if a completely authentic original version for a modern viewing format comes out, what happens next? Because in a way, this fight to protect and preserve what once was has become a pretty large community. And I'm curious what happens to that community when everyone sees that the mission has pretty much been accomplished.